I put that on this today, and I tell you, Herb Frady's not here today. He did want me to express that he's sorry he's not here, but I talked to him this morning. He expressed that his desire that we address certain points of this noise ordinance, and that is that I think we had a noise ordinance that was revised sometime last year or 2 years ago. The pendulum swung from property owner being able to use certain equipment on the property to where they can't use certain equipment. I think the pendulum went too far when it went. I don't know what the decibel level is. I think it's 55. But what I'd be asking the other commissioners to do is simply to ask the appropriate folks to revisit that zoning ordinance to give some latitude to allow the use of certain equipment on your property. I have tried to figure out the difference between the noise a lawnmower, a vacuum cleaner, chainsaw, or an airplane may make, and there's certain exemptions to our current noise ordinance that it doesn't make any sense to me on why you could operate a chainsaw all day long and be way above the decibel level, but at the same time you couldn't, for a short period of time, use some other equipment. And so Herb said that he would help support the revision or look at the ordinance. Now, my thought is something on this line, although I don't know because I'm not an expert in the noise area. I have talked to Lynn, and I guess Lynn's not here today. So, Loveless that had appeared before this county commission a couple months ago that he would like, and this isn't particular to him because there's other folks that are out there that are interested in this very issue, the ability to ride his motorcycle with his boys on a large tract of land in the south part of the county. And this commission took away the ability for him to do that. And I'm talking about large tract. How large is Lynn's?
It's 30 acres.
30 acres. And he said, look, I agree, I shouldn't be riding at 2 o'clock in the morning. Of course, I don't think that was ever the issue. But he would certainly be willing to work with us to help us craft something that would either limit the number of hours, the number of people, the number of days, any number of things, and just would like to revisit that area. So I know that Herb would support at least looking at it.
Okay, I'll make a couple comments on that. First is, there's nothing in the ordinance that prohibits the use of any equipment. It does prohibit noise and specifically exempts things like chainsaws and so forth because they're used for maintenance or construction. And there's no regulation on those. And addressing a couple of things Mr. Lovelace said to us is one of the things he objected to is that overflying aircraft. Well, nobody on a local level can address overflying aircraft. But there are noise ordinances that address aircraft. I'm sure everybody here is old enough to remember that the Concorde was banned from overflights in the U.S. because of noise. Military flights are restricted over land because of noise. And almost every airport I know of has traffic procedures that apply to noise abatement. So people do control overflying aircraft. The other thing that he said, and he said this before, and I'm not sure certain he understands, is that if he stood next to the marshal and spoke, the noise meter would read 55 decibels. Well, that's probably true. But if he's standing in his property and speaking, and you can hear him in your house at 55 decibels, so you've got to shout to be heard over him, that's a problem for you. And I think that's an intrusion on, it's the old step of your right to swing your arm stops at my nose. And what Mr. Lovelace and several others were doing was hitting a lot of people in the nose. And that's where the problem came from. There were efforts back then to address this with his neighbors, by the neighbors, by number of riders and time and so forth, and they were not interested in talking about that. And this is a result of that. I'm sorry that some people may feel that we're overly restrictive of them, but it was the only choice we had to protect the peace and quiet of the other people who deserve it. paid for it and expected.
Well, I would also have to agree with Eric that I think the ordinance is gone to the extreme to one side, and I think that some review should go with this noise ordinance.
To me, that there's got to be a middle ground here. I find it hard to imagine that we would put a property owner in a position that they could not use a readily available resource on the tract of land of that size. Should there be some restrictions? Absolutely. But I'm finding it hard to believe that a total ban is the answer. I'm not sure what the answer is, but I'm also convinced that what we see doesn't necessarily look like it's the solution. And I think it's incumbent upon us to have staff take a look at this to figure out if there is a ground that isn't acceptable. And Peter, I understand your comments about not infringing on your neighbors, but I think you've got the same incumbent result if you take away my right when you have infringed on me. So, again, I'm not sure what the answer is, but it seems to me like you're erring as far one way as you are the other by not allowing me to have a right versus giving you all the rights. So I agree. I think probably I'll have staff take a look at it and see if there is a middle ground that makes any reasonable sense.
We dispute the statement that we have a total ban on anything. We don't. If you choose to ride, in this case, and we're talking about dirt bikes, on your piece of property, that's fine, as long as the noise doesn't ruin your neighbor's life. And that's the problem we've had, is it was. And all the people, I've been to 3 or 4 tracks in this county. Every one of them, everybody says, I have this X size piece of property. Well, if you had 1,000 acres and your track is on the edge of it, it doesn't matter. And his size of his property is irrelevant because the track is not in the middle of his property, it's on the edge. And that's where the problem came from. And I don't think it was the neighbors insisting on anything other than their lives were being shattered and destroyed. If the person can figure out how to ride without bothering anybody, or if the people who live next door aren't bothered by noise, then there's no issue.
Well, I'm not a noise expert, so I don't know whether the 55 is a reasonable number, an unreasonable number, under what circumstances and what location. And I think what I would like to have is a little more definitive information today.
Was the noise ordinance generated from the complaints originally from the neighbors of Mr. Lovelace? Is that what precipitated at the time he wrote?
There were 3 operating tracks in the county that I had complaints on for 2 of them. One down near Brooks, one down near the water plant off Antioch Road, and this one over on Farmwood.
Well, when you say tracks and stuff like that, if it's a commercial enterprise or something like that, I think we can address that as well. I mean, talking about somebody's residential use is what I'm talking about. So I don't see any harm in studying the thing. And it sounds like 4 to 1, so let's study it.
As long as we do this with the premise that we're not coming out of here with a preconceived answer.
Absolutely.
The whole idea is to look at it. Staff may look at it and say, given the lay of the land or the particulars of the situation, we don't think y'all change anything. And I think for me, that's an important piece of this equation, is to look at it or to look at it with bias. And I want them to look at it, but not necessarily with a bias that we need to change it, just to look at it from the perspective of does it make sense or not make sense.
And Jack, I mean, when the staff is doing this, I mean, you may want to even, I see the 2 reporters here today, hopefully that this gets in the newspaper. I'd like to hear from the other citizens out there.